The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, as always, we'll review and preview the past and future matches, but also we're going to carve out quite a bit of time on this show to share our thoughts on the state of the team here at the midway point of the season, and we'll also cover a few of the pieces of Austin FC news. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I am Jeremiah Bentley, and I want to talk about Wednesday night because we never saw each other, and the weather was insane. Like, what was your experience like just as a person trying to go to a soccer match on Wednesday night in Austin, Texas, when we got this note? Like, I was sitting with Aggie from the Fighting Leslies at Turnstile in a very sunny environment, and he's like, "Oh, the game's been delayed." I'm like, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." And then very shortly, I learned why that it had been delayed.
Yeah, so as I was telling you off air, like almost immediately after we finished recording last week's episode, I started feeling extremely sick, and so I ended up not going on Wednesday. But we're sitting at our house in South Austin watching the radar, and it's just this little blob of a storm that came through and did some real serious damage in parts of Austin. But down here at our house, it didn't even rain. I think we got one little gust of wind and nothing else happened. So it was wild to see the different experiences depending on what part of town you were in. And then even just how quickly it came through and did so much damage and then disappeared. But yeah, we weren't actually in any of it.
Yeah. So we had up at our house in Northwest Austin, we had like the rain. We didn't have the hail. We had some wind, and then it was just interesting, like the little pockets of town and what happened. So I've got a friend that lives at like Steck and Mopac effectively, and around there were like trees uprooted and stuff like that. And that's not very far from the stadium, but in the stadium area, I mean, it was super hairy and it hailed a little, but it was small and it rained a really long time, and it ended up only delaying the game for I think 40 minutes, and it was sunny, and like the field held up amazingly. The field was actually better on Wednesday night than it was in San Diego, just due to the sprinklers, I think, on Saturday. So, I mean, it turned out okay, but man, yeah, thoughts to everybody else out there who's dealt with a lot. I've seen some pictures from parts of Austin where people had these huge trees that were decades old, uprooted, and windows broken and all kinds of stuff like that. But it's such a strange storm because it was so locally focused and not spread across the city.
All right, before we jump into talking about soccer, I want to give one more reminder to folks about the Patreon stuff. So we're planning on sending those packages out here in the very near future. If you are part of the Patreon and have moved at any point in the last couple of years, and there's even the slightest chance that the wrong address is in Patreon, please go onto your profile in there and update that address. If you are having trouble finding where to do that, I know the UI on Patreon is a little bit strange sometimes. If you're having trouble finding it, just send us a message and we can maybe tell you where to do it or just do it manually. We can't actually change your address in Patreon for you, which is why I'm asking you to do it because, but yeah, go on and update that for sure. Is any other housekeeping here, Jeremiah, or can we move on to the meat of the show?
Well, just the one housekeeping moment. I like that you were looking at me wanting to commit to a date, but we hadn't talked about it, and so you didn't. But I think I can say, if all your stuff is in, Jackson Bentley and I are free this weekend, and at some point this weekend, we can come down and put packets together and hopefully get some things out.
I'm going to be out of town for my niece's birthday this weekend, so maybe next weekend.
Next weekend. Okay, gotcha. No, let's move on then.
All right, Austin has another 1-point week in 2 league matches, drawing RSL at home 1-1 and then losing 2-0 away in San Diego. Jeremiah, where should we start on the last but another disappointing week in May?
I think that's the best explanation. A lot of this stuff I think we'll get into in detail about sort of the why behind it when we do the deep dive into where we are and where we're going. But I think the offense continues to be uninspired. I went to FB Ref today and looked, and by far the San Diego match was the lowest XG match of the season. While that's an imperfect stat, I think like when you look at a team relative to where they're doing, that is amazingly impressive in a negative way. So it's 0.2 XG for San Diego. I think 0.7 against Minnesota was the next lowest. So it's like not even close. So I think just when we look at this week, there's possibilities on what causes this. One is just minutes. Like there's been a lot of minutes in a lot of matches. Like it catches up with people and they look slow and leggy. There's structural issues. There's talent issues, but maybe more than just raw talent, like where the talent is and what they're doing. Like quickly, like how much for this week specifically, and not thinking about the whole first half of the season, like where do you sort of attribute those three possible factors into how it turned out?
I think you're right. It is all of the above. I have found myself a little more annoyed with the structural stuff this week as opposed to weeks in the past. There have been weeks in the past where we are creating chances and not finishing them. This week specifically, we're not really even creating chances. There was not a lot going on, especially in the San Diego game, but RSL wasn't a ton better. We did create more chances in that game, but it just seems like something is not working, and we kind of keep trying and giving it time to let it fix itself, and that's just not happening. And so I think later on in the show, as you mentioned, we'll do this mid-season review and maybe talk about what we've seen that isn't working and how we might want to see it change in the near future.
Yeah, that's even a good point, honestly, about the Wednesday night game. Like that goal comes in added time, and I think that was definitely an uninspiring performance, especially offensively for that one. So like it's just in different ways it continues going on. I mean, on the positive side, we do get to see player returns, and we got so close to being completely healthy. I originally wrote that like, oh, Austin's back and everybody's healthy, and then I remember that Julio goes down on Saturday, misses the last 15 minutes, and we don't know right now what his injury status is. And maybe he's fine. I don't know. We'll get that later this week. But on Wednesday, we get 22 minutes from Danny, 10 minutes from Robert Taylor, and like impactful minutes, I felt like, for RSL. And then on Saturday, Danny gets the start and goes the whole way, largely out of necessity, probably more than anything else. And then we see Dessler and Taylor come on at 72 and get 20-ish minutes. So if you're looking for positives around this team, the fact that this team is relatively healthy and has their best players available, and hopefully in a month or so we'll get to add something to it. Like I think that's a positive outcome out of what we've seen so far and out of this big stretch in May.
Yeah, so after this week, Austin is sitting in 10th place in the West. So just slowly dipping down the table over the last month or so. Luckily, almost none of the other teams in the West really wanted to pass us. We kind of forced them to. And so there's not a lot of space between that middle pack, right? I think it's 5 points separating 6th place and 11th place. But we are towards the bottom of that pack right now. And so I guess you can take that glass half empty or glass half full, is that we're close to the bottom, but we're not that far from the top still. And so it can still happen if this team can change some things, if this team can get going. That's the big question, though, is can they do that? We've gotten through this rough run of games. Can they actually get something moving forward and start scoring some goals?
Yeah, that's the thing I look forward to diving into, because with, the health is fine. Obviously, there's no DP spots available. The improvement is going to have to come from inside the house and from inside the family, and that's yet to be seen. So like it's great, like you said, it's great that we're not eliminated, yet at this point in the season, halfway through. But like we need to be able to find ways to look for signals about how things are going to change, and we'll dig into that after we sort of talk about the matches from this week on the other side of the break.
All right, hang tight. We'll be right back. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment, which you can check out wherever you get your podcast. And I do, Landon, I want to ask you about a particular nonprofit. You know HAM, the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians?
Yeah.
So FEF Law is a big supporter of theirs. I happen to be going to the Corporate Battle of the Bands fundraiser for HAM Wednesday night. I believe that FEF Law is going to have like a corporate band there. And I'm really looking forward to that. But I feel like corporate band competitions are a little bit like karaoke nights with good people, right? Like you want to see actuaries go and like play and be terrible. But really what you learn is that there's like actually a lot of talented people who work at companies who are pretty good. And it should be a good show. But FEF Law is a big part of that. So I'm looking forward to seeing them on Wednesday night.
You can go to fef.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fef.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending, and I do not believe that they have a band, but we'll find out on Wednesday. Maybe I'm wrong.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. To learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. We are going to quickly run through the 2 games this week because, as we said, we're going to do this halfway point season review segment, and we want to make sure and have enough time for that. So let's start off with this RSL game. I think the main pre-match narrative was just that this was the first time that we were going to have pretty much a healthy, a full healthy set of players, at least available to be on the bench and to play. Maybe not ready to start yet, though.
Yeah, that was one big thing, and then just we talked about this last week when we did the preview briefly. Is something case, but this is one where like you want Austin to win if Austin's going to be competing for higher positions in the playoffs, because to this point RSL has not been very good. Spoiler alert: it does not turn out with an Austin victory. I think lineup wise, we know that you're going to see a little bit of rotation in the places where you have rotation just from the minutes people are playing, but this is once again Austin has a chance to just barely start what seems to be most of their best 11. So you get Stuver, Biru, Heinzike, Svatak, and Gallagher across the back, Savovich, Sanchez, and Wolff in the midfield, and then the 3 DP front line of Uzuni, Vasquez, and Bukhari. So it's basically as strong of 11 as Austin could start, but we don't see a ton of production, and we don't see a ton of inspired play, and I feel like it seemed like a low energy team all night long.
Yeah, so as you said, this one was 1-1. So I think we can go through the 2 goals quickly here. The first one is RSL's goal in the 67th minute. This one comes from a free kick. So Ilie has to drag down Diego Luna as he's about to get beat, which leads to a Diego Luna free kick. He bends it in, finds Willie Agata's head, and beats Brad Stuver with the header. This one was really frustrating to me just because Agata was entirely unmarked. It didn't look like anybody ever had any intention of marking him. And I'm not entirely sure, upon watching the replay several times, like what the plan was, like where it fell apart. So you had Justin Glad was the first man in RSL's line there. And a lot of times, and Austin does this quite a bit, is you'll try to play a ball at that first man and have him flick it on for the rest of the runners behind him. And so my best guess is you have Ilie in front of Agata and Brendan Heinzike behind him. As the ball comes in, I guess Ilie thought that Justin Glad was going to be the one to connect with the ball. So he steps forward and kind of sandwiches Glad with whoever was standing in front of him. I can't remember who it was. Heinzike is behind Agata thinking, okay, Ilie is going to be the one to kind of mark across his face. and that doesn't happen. So he just ends up in the box on his own. Whatever happened, it was a complete breakdown from Austin. You should not let the other team's number 9 get a free header in the box on a set piece like that.
Yeah, that one was really disappointing. Just it's indicative of the way that throughout the year of just Austin gives up a lot of goals when guys like kind of go to sleep or like they're not connected or like this. It's not exactly transition, but these moments become so frustrating when it's like a collective team failure that can't be pinned on one single person.
Yeah. Austin gets the equalizer very late, 93rd minute. So it's a corner kick that gets dropped back to Kolmanich. He whips in a cross that finds Diego Rubio's head. I'm pretty sure it then bounces off of a defender's head and takes kind of a weird trajectory, which is why the keeper has no chance on it. But it counts. Diego Rubio didn't care whose head it went off last. It went in the back of the net. And so an exciting goal, exciting to see a goal scored so late, but all it did was turn a very embarrassing result into a slightly less embarrassing result.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those. Well, I was sitting with Jackson, and it's like we were all very frustrated, and then we were only slightly frustrated, but nobody's leaving that building happy. And I think one thing that you wrote in the notes is just the opportunities. There were opportunities for both teams really early, and both of those could have changed games, and neither one of them took advantage of that. And I feel like it's also indicative of kind of what not very good teams do, is not take advantage of their opportunities. That does feel like the theme on the night.
Yeah, it was a game full of missed chances. So Diego Luna gets a chance in the 15th minute. It starts with a Pablo Ruiz ball to Marchuk, who's their right winger. So one tactical thing I saw in this game is the first 15 minutes or so, RSL was just cutting Austin open so easily, like whenever Austin was pressing them for the first 15 minutes or so. And essentially all they would do is play into a gap to Pablo Ruiz's feet. He's a very good player. So he's just able to turn very quickly and either drive forward or play a progressive pass. And our press was toast. It was just done. And so eventually they did make some adjustments and they started marking him better and made it more difficult, but not before RSL gets this really dangerous chance 14 minutes in where they find Ruiz breaking the press. It's a big diagonal to Marchuk that Biru manages very poorly, which is becoming somewhat of a signature move for Biru, where a cross gets played to his side of the field or in his side of the box, and whenever defending the box, and he starts backpedaling towards it and jumps very confidently like he's going to win a ball, only to completely miss it and leave his teammates in the wind with the opposition player completely unmarked with the ball at their feet. And that's what happens here. Stuver comes off his line. So Marchuk tries to square it to an onrushing Luna. Luckily, Brendan Hines-Ike is also crashing into the box and is able to kick his leg up behind him and kind of poke the ball up into the air. That throws Luna off his run just enough that he can't catch the ball cleanly and heads it wide. I think if Diego Luna is 5'7" instead of 5'5" or whatever he is, he still scores this one. But because it was just a little too high for him, he had to wait for it to drop a couple of inches before he could actually make contact with it.
But I mean, it was also like a really good play from Hindsight to even keep the first attempt out.
Yeah. A couple Austin chances. So Vasquez gets one off the bar where Bukhari creates this chance by himself from the right side, receives it deep, pokes it past their fullback and just beats him in a foot race, does some magic to evade a Pablo Ruiz slide tackle. And then Vasquez makes a really nice little move in the box to get open. Bukhari chips a cross in. It's just a little too tall for Vasquez. And so he extends as far as he can to get on it, but can't get over it. And so he just pops it off the crossbar. This is one of those where I'm just like, I can't blame Vasquez too much. I think he did what he could, and the ball was just too tall for him. But it's happened so many times that it's like I can't defend him every time. He needs to score one. And Uzuni essentially made the exact same run as Vasquez here. And so he's about 2 yards deeper and probably would have had a better angle on the ball. But there's no way for Vasquez to know that. And also, this has become a problem as well, where Uzuni and Vasquez are just doing the same thing all the time. And so it's not helping anybody to have two guys doing the exact same thing and being in the same spot. And this is another little example of how that happens.
Yeah, I mean, and Uzuni has created the trend of even if he is in the right place and has the right chance, the shot doesn't always come off to where it's going to go. So who knows? He might sky that or fluff it or whatever. So yeah, that one was frustrating, but that's one of those. So lots of people were super grumpy that night. And I feel like the one thing about these 2-match weeks is sort of Wednesday matters in the context of what happens on Saturday. So if Austin goes on the road and gets the result away, everything's okay. But, that doesn't happen. I think for the things for this one specifically, so we've talked about how the MLS team of the match day is kind of dumb, and we get Rubio coming off the bench, playing 10 minutes, scoring 1 goal in this 10 minutes, and making the team of the match week. I mean, I guess luckily it was team of the match week off the bench, so maybe that means that he was the best player off the bench, which is not the way they phrase those. I mean, one of the most meaningful things also out of this one is we get a yellow for Ilie, I think, early in the second half. One for Sabovic super late, I think like 90+5 or something like that. That will also make them unavailable for the San Diego match, which then complicates this how Austin, after failing in a way in the midweek, is needing to get a result on the weekend.
Yeah, one other thing I'll say about this RSL match is that, like, maybe the curse is contagious and has either spread to other parts of the team, because Guilherme Biru gets an open header in the 45th minute or so.
Oh, man, yeah.
I don't remember if this is before or after halftime. I think it was just before halftime. But he receives a ball pretty much unmarked from a nice Gallagher cross and just heads the ball straight into the ground, and it bounces over goal. And in the 72nd minute, almost does the exact same thing, where Gallagher plays another ball to the back post. Biru sneaks in, no defenders see him coming, and he's able to arrive to the ball unmarked, heads it straight into the ground, and it bounces over the goal. And so I don't know if the curse gets passed to someone and then the person who had it before is absolved of it, or if it's just like a disease and now they all have it.
I think it's like The Ring, where you die and you pass on to somebody else. That person dies too. I think I'm right. I don't actually remember the plot of that movie, but it feels like a procession of bad things happening to people, which seems to be what's happening to Austin.
Anything else on the RSL match before we hit San Diego?
No, let's go ahead and hit San Diego.
So, as you mentioned before, Ilie and Sabovic both get yellow cards. So they are unavailable due to yellow card accumulation. And then Brendan Hines-Ike, as the lineup comes out for this game, is also missing in action. They had a shortened media availability after this game due to flight schedule, and so we didn't actually get an answer on that. So I don't know what the deal with Hines-Ike was. He did not have enough yellows to also be on accumulation. He was not listed on the injury report or anything, so we'll see. I'm hoping to be able to go to media availability, the midweek media availability this week, and hopefully we'll find out what the deal is, and hopefully they'll say, oh, he's fine and he's going to be ready to go this week, because if not, without him, without Cascante, I don't know who we're going to play at center back.
Well, one of the things that this definitely highlights, this concern about BHI, is that Austin, at this position, which is maybe one of his deepest positions, is like just deep enough to deal with like a little bit of player unavailability. And hopefully this is something that Austin's going to add to during the offseason. Even though there's a lot of holes to fill, but it feels like center back is a place of import for this club. One of the things that we always forget to talk about, or we don't always, but we often forget to talk about when we do this, is like traveling support. And I know that this will end up being the biggest week of the year for away fans. And it was great to see so many of our friends going and traveling and having a good time and like exploring San Diego and all it had to offer, even though maybe the soccer part of it didn't work great. And I'm a little bit disappointed to not be able to do that. But just like this, it reemphasizes how much the community is a part of this experience beyond just the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I was seeing pictures and was very, very jealous of the the beach and the food and the nice weather, it all looked very great. But Mike and Steph were there, so I'm sure we'll get to hear more about that on Swing Tower this week.
Yes, that's another reason that y'all should listen to Swing Tower Soccer if you're not, which I feel like we talk about almost every week, and if we don't, we should talk about it every week.
So in the lineup, we had Stuver in goal. The back line was Biru, Cascante, Svatak, and Gallagher. And then Antonio Gomez was called up from the second team for a short-term loan. He was the only center back on the bench. And in the midfield, it was kind of the 4-4-2 look that we've seen with Pereira and Dubrsarski central, Wolff and Bukhari wide. Wolff had a bit more freedom, was kind of floating around a bit more, but and then Uzuni and Vasquez up top together. Austin pretty much had nothing going on offensively in the first half. I think they did a decent job defensively of limiting San Diego from getting a lot of high quality chances, but it was all one way traffic as far as possession and field tilt go. And so San Diego is a very good team, and so they are going to create some chances, and luckily didn't finish any of those in the first half. Austin goes in at halftime. They make some adjustments, and the press, I'm not exactly sure what changes they made in the press, but San Diego was having a harder time playing through Austin than they did in the first half. And then Austin had a decent little stretch right after halftime where they were keeping the ball a bit better, able to use Danny Pereira in the midfield a little bit more, and got this decent chance from Vasquez early on where Bukhari creates something on the edge of the box over to the right and sets up Vasquez for a header that forces a strong save, but doesn't go in. And then this doesn't last long. Not long into, I think it's like 57th minute, Dreyer gets in behind and gets a ball on his foot. Luckily hits himself in the face with the shot somehow.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
He tries to kick it and it just pops straight up and hits him in the face and he falls down. He's calling for a penalty. Cascante is right behind him and touches him on the back, but it doesn't look like a push. It looks like he tags him and he just kind of stumbled over the ball. I also kind of think if it did go in or something else happened, it almost looked like he was maybe offside too. So either way, nothing comes of that one. But they do get their goal shortly after that in the 60th minute. So this is a long ball in behind for Chucky Lozano. He does really well to kind of chop it back and hold up play until reinforcements arrive. Cascante marks the first runner that comes through, but then Luca De La Torre is the second runner, and he arrives with nobody near him. So Lozano plays to him at the top of the box. He finishes really, really well. It's a great finish by him, but he also had way too much time at the top of the box right there with nobody on him. Where are our midfielders tracking that run? Like, I understand the ball over the top. Okay, you do what you can. And Lozano did really well to evade the defenders there. But whenever the next guy comes, he started from the same spot you did. And so Danny Pereira, Dubrsarski, somebody should be tracking him. And nobody did that. And then Maurice Edu on the broadcast made a good point as well, where on this play, our back line was very high, but then our forwards were not putting any pressure on the ball. And so you can do one of those things, but you can't do both of them at the same time. Otherwise, especially with forwards like they have, they're just going to drop dimes over the top and let these really fast, talented guys run onto it. And so if you're not going to put any pressure, you need to be sitting deeper. Or if you're going to have the line pushed up really high, you have to be putting pressure on the ball. But they did neither of those things here.
Yeah, you're letting two national team players from like the best national teams in this region connect, and like somebody should be watching out for that. Somebody should be like playing a little more positionally aware to keep that from happening. I mean, it wasn't that surprising given that the goal was going to come at some point, given like the way the clubs performed on the night. But it's another example of just like the goal, we talked about before, like where it's just like there's like a collective failure. There's like not one person makes a single mistake that leads this goal to happen, but it's like it's like a collective group of people who aren't doing the things they need to do.
Yeah. Austin is trying to fight back and get that draw. They're keeping the ball, but it seems disjointed. I mean, how many times did we see Danny Pereira look upfield and gesture to someone to come closer to him? And that's one of the problems with this 4-4-2 look is that, okay, Danny Pereira is sitting deep in the midfield, and if he wants to play forward, there's not a 10 there to play to. There's not an advanced midfielder, so one of the strikers needs to drop in, but both of our strikers are staying super high, and so there's just nothing he can do there. And this is one of the structural things I have a problem with here is you can't say you want to keep the ball and you want to do more with the ball, but then set the team up like this where there's not really options. And then the whole first half, we're just trying to hit long balls over the top to guys, which is not a terrible strategy if you have guys who can hit that pass, but we don't. We clearly don't have guys who can hit that pass because they haven't hit it all year pretty much. So that was all really frustrating. Cascante goes down in like, I don't know, 84th minute or somewhere around there. We've already made all of our subs. So we're playing down a man for the last 10 minutes of the game. Austin, I mean, did okay, held their own for a little bit, but San Diego kills any hope of the late draw in the 92nd minute. We just kind of get pushed back, defending deep, and they just beat some tired guys who defend sloppily and are able to score a goal.
Yeah, that one's tough. There was the subs. They did what they can do. I guess one thing, for once, like I've always like seen CJ come on and play a few minutes and like wanted to see more. And I feel like from this performance, probably just like is indicative of CJ was like a part of the whole team. But you know, I feel like he was provided a little spark. But even in this moment, like CJ cannot provide a spark. There was nothing there that came out of him. You know, like when Robert Taylor comes on, I was like, oh, maybe he'll be able to like make something happen. So like Austin has some subs that sometimes can make a difference, which we saw from the Diego Rubio performance in the midweek. But just on this night, with this structure, with this club and whatever they were doing, it didn't matter what Austin was going to do. Like it felt like the goals were never going to come.
Well, I mean, if you can't progress the ball through midfield, then it doesn't matter what forwards are there
fair.
if you're not getting
That's
the ball
fair.
to them. And so talking about subs, I am generally not someone who gets so agitated by sub decisions, especially like when you make the subs. This is going back to the RSL game a little bit, but I was annoyed by how late the subs were in the RSL game. I think it was the first one like in the 80th minute. Am I remembering that
I think
correctly?
that's right. If it wasn't the first, it was the bulk of the subs, the meaningful subs. Landon, I've never heard you agree with the Facebook and Reddit group, but now I think y'all have come together on a common complaint.
So oftentimes, the reason why people are saying we want subs is because the team hasn't looked very good, and usually the reason I push back is like, look at our bench. Who else are you going to put on that's going to do better than these guys? In the RSL game, they started looking slow and tired, and it just needed energy. And so in that case, I'm like, it doesn't matter who it is. Just put someone who's less tired than these guys on, and hopefully they can make something better happen.
And Landon, wait, I was like looking at that group. The guys that come on at 80 are Robert Taylor, Diego Rubio, Jean Kolmanich, Heider Obregon. Like those are guys for Austin who can make a difference, and maybe could have made more of one at 70 than 80.
Right. Yeah. And so I was annoyed with that one. And then in the San Diego game, I was very annoyed with Mirto Uzuni just because he didn't do much. In the RSL game, I think he had some more touches. He was moving around trying to be a bit more involved in the game. It didn't amount to anything, but he was working really hard to try to contribute to the game in some way. In this one, not only did he not do a very good job like getting involved, but when he did get involved, he played some bad passes and just turned balls over or made the wrong decision, and he just looked straight up bad. And I've not thought that about him in a lot of games. I'm like, okay, he's not getting the ball. He's not set up to succeed with who's playing around him. He's just not involved at all. But in this one, I thought he was just straight up bad. And I was not very excited for him to stay on until the 80th minute or whenever he came off.
Yeah, I think this is probably the time to pitch the dirt over the grave of the San Diego match and talk about where we stand right now and where we are going forward. And I feel like the themes that we've talked about on this week a lot of times apply to how the season has gone so far. Maybe some change that we want to see going forward, but it'll be good to talk sort of more specifics about some of them.
Yeah, we'll come back and we're going to do this mid-season check-in, but let's take a quick break before we do that. Hang tight.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. You can fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
Our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country. And the Austin team is celebrating the end of the legislative session today, so maybe give them a couple days off. It was a long, grueling session. Call them next week when you need something.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities and is proud to support Moon Tower Soccer and Austin FC because we are going to win Copa Tejas. I'm saying it now. I'm going to say that now.
Awesome.
We're going to win Copa Tejas. We're going to win the U.S. Open Cup. So contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. All right, we are back. We have another player rumor to discuss here in a little bit. But first, we promised a mid-season check-in, kind of a state of the club now that we are officially halfway through the season. Jeremiah, where should we start here? Let's maybe start with the month of May and what that we knew it was going to be a tough one, but what it ended up looking like now that it's behind us.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be a tough one. I don't know that any of us expected it to be this tough one. At first, I was reading through this on FB Ref, and I'm like, this wasn't that bad of a month. Then I realized that the 2 wins I was looking at were US Open Cup matches. So in league play, 0 wins, 4 draws, 3 losses in May. So I don't know that 4 points out of 7 matches in the month of May is what everybody was pulling for.
Yeah, the Open Cup really, imagine what this month would feel like if it weren't for Open Cup games.
Oh, man.
And it almost felt bad even with Open Cup games, given how the first one went. So yeah, 4 draws, 3 losses. 2 of those draws were against very good teams on the road, but then 2 of the other ones were against very beatable teams at home. And we only scored, I think, 4 goals in MLS play in May. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that does sound right. And that kind of touches on where Austin stands right now. So 10th in the West, as we mentioned, it's a very crowded mid part of the table, but it's one that Austin continues to sink down a little bit week by week. -9 goal differential, one of the worst in the Western Conference. On pace to have the worst offensive output in the history of the league in terms of goals per match, which is not great.
Yeah, we're the second lowest goal scored in the entire league, only above Montreal, who has only won 1 game this year. So what is the way forward now? What is there a way out? And if so, what is that? Because it's no longer early. The growing pains, in theory, should be over by this point.
Yeah. So one of the things as you touched on, and then we also saw from Verde All Day, one of the articles, I don't remember which one, is that the best thing is that Austin's already played their home and aways with the 3 top teams in the conference, Vancouver, Minnesota, and San Diego, which means just by its nature, the schedule is going to get a little bit easier going forward. I think the second part of that is once we get through May, there's a lot more one game per week, events. So hopefully you can play your best 11 repeatedly, that for Austin and for others, but hopefully for a team that maybe it's not as deep as some others, that provides some point of advantage to Austin. Those are my 2 big ones. I guess there's some outside hope that there's a bunch of money that's spent during the offseason. There are a bunch of players brought in during the offseason and, including Robert Taylor, sort of like early in the season. And there's some opportunity as you have the chance to train together more and in playing less games, these guys sort of find ways to connect and find each other. Like that's a very hopeful possibility, but like what else are you seeing?
Yeah, I have a few other reasons to maybe be hopeful, but I'm going to save those to end the segment on.
Okay.
First, I want to talk about like what the issues are and
Okay.
how and if we think they can be addressed. So one thing is that I'm still not sure who this team is or what they want to do, especially after this week. Early in the season, they were defending deep and playing just a bunker and counter game and did okay with it. They weren't scoring that much, but they were letting in no goals. They tried to start keeping the ball a little bit more, which probably led to them giving up some more goals, but they're also not scoring the goals now. And like often we saw that this week, especially in the first half of that San Diego game, where they're playing these direct balls to the forwards, but not having talented enough passers to actually connect any of them. And then whenever we do try to keep the ball, not having those creative moments to actually break anything open. Like in the San Diego game, Nico Estevez after the game said that they needed to do better with the ball, but when the game plan seems to be just launching balls over the top, like how is that setting you up to keep the ball or do any better with the ball at that point? And so it makes it hard to build the momentum. So going forward, does Nico Estevez keep trying the same stuff and just saying, like, we have to have faith, we have to give these guys opportunities, or is his seat getting hot enough now that he says, okay, I don't have, like, I can't afford to just keep running the same stuff out and hoping it eventually comes together. I have to start making some changes. Like if you were to say, make a bet on which way he approaches it, do you think he tries to make some substantial changes, or do you think he goes with kind of more of the same in faith that these really talented players can start to gel a little bit more and look a bit more unified?
Well, I want to go back a little bit to the point around like possession and playing style, because that was one of the things I was on FB Ref trying to put together is like, do results matter if Austin has more of the ball or less of the ball? And then I was like, oh, well, the 3 league matches where Austin has had the least possession are all wins. But these matches were also 3 consecutive matches in the month of March. So if you exclude the fact that they were just kind of on a run of good form, like there's no correlation between possession and lack of possession and outcome and goals or anything like that. And even in those matches, I think 2 of them were 1-0 wins. So they like don't really count. And now back to your question about Nico, if you believe the things that he says to the press in these press conferences, both post-game and midweek, and every indication I have so far makes me believe that he is an earnest person, is that he's going to keep doing the same things and believes that the better results will come.
I guess part of that question is doing the same thing. Does that mean with the same people on the field? Because I have a take or maybe a pitch to say, like, you don't need to change the strategy of it all that much, but with the pieces we have on the field, it's not working. And that brings up my question is, can you justify starting Uzuni and Vasquez anymore?
Oh,
I would
I didn't know
argue.
No, I didn't know we were going to get into that. No, I was just talking to somebody this week, and I'm like, if it was up to me, and it's not my money, which is not, Mirtu Uzuni's best position is relieving Brendan Vasquez for 20 minutes playing striker off the bench. And I think that's the best way for this team to line up on offense. That's disappointing, and I don't know how you like sign a guy who scored 50 goals in 3 years in Spain who is doing that. But yeah, I think they're in the same place too much at the same time. And I think Brandon Vasquez does a better job of scoring when he has the opportunity.
I would argue Vasquez is also a difference maker in other parts of his game where he can link up, play a little bit between build up and attack. You can play to his feet. He'll defend well. He can do this other stuff that he's quite good at. Uzuni is like, it's hard to point out spots where he adds to the team. He works very hard, so you can say, okay, he contributes defensively with how hard he runs. But I would imagine if you asked Robert Taylor very nicely and told him he was going to start, that he would also probably run really hard. And so we have other guys who have skill sets that can help in these areas, especially now with Robert Taylor back healthy. So I would propose, let's just try for a game or two to go all out possession based attacking. Let's go back to the Wolff days and say, Danny Pereira, you're going to be one of our deeper midfielders, and have, because there were flashes in the San Diego game where Owen and Danny were next to each other in the midfield and they had nobody to play to, but they were keeping the ball in that area and it was really hard to get the ball off of them. And so that just made me think like, okay, what if we had them both in the midfield and then you have Slavovich or Ilie as the third one. I don't really care which in this scenario. And then we start Taylor at left wing, Bukhari at right wing, and just run like a 3-man midfield, 3-man front line, 4-3-3 look, and just play possession ball and let these guys do things that they're good at. We might get forced into this because Uzuni's out on international duty this week, but I would be curious to see what that looked like.
And do you think, I mean, there's a summer window coming, and I'm super interested in this idea because I'd only thought about Uzuni in the context of like what we see from him and maybe where he's best deployed and not necessarily like what the other pieces are. But do you it becomes a depth thing too at that point where like, do you think between Obrian, Taylor, and Bukhari, like for the foreseeable future, like you can pull off effective wing play too? I mean, I guess at some point you have John Gallagher back as an option to eat up a few minutes there too. So maybe that does work.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like if we were running with two guys there, then sure, it might be a concern. But if you have three other starting level guys in Bukhari, Taylor, and Obrian, and then Owen can squeeze in there late in the game if you need to. Gallagher can pop in there for a few minutes. Like we have players we can run there, and so yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see what it looks like without him this coming week. This is talking about keeping the ball a little bit more. This is a question I saw Kevin Morris pose, and it's an interesting thought experiment. And the question was, would this team be better under Josh Wolff? And I want to defend Kevin before listeners start sending us emails.
Okay.
Kevin Morris is not arguing that Josh Wolff should be the coach. He's not arguing that Josh Wolff should not have been fired. He's just having the thought experiment of, if Josh Wolff were in charge of this group of players, would they be doing better in the table? And because like those Wolff teams, they knew what they wanted to do. They were usually incapable of doing it, but they knew what they wanted to do. And these teams don't really seem to know what they want to do. And so I always said those Wolff teams that the roster was the main reason they were so bad. This is a much better roster. And so maybe they could execute a little bit better against those plans and put some goals in the back of the net now that there is some talented guys up top. What's your take on that?
I mean, my main issue with that take is that I don't know if I have 100% issue with that take. I'm convinced that Josh Wolff is not a good leader of people in a head coaching position and cannot get the best out of everybody. It may very well be that Nico Estevez is equally incompetent at it, but in a different way. And that's where I'm like, no, I don't know that they would be worse, and I don't know if they would be better at the same time. I feel like they may be the two exact opposite sides of the same coin, where they can't get the best out of their players, but in very different ways.
One thing I have written down here is that Nico always has very good reasons to change things, and Josh always had very bad reasons to keep things the same.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I mean, the answer may well be neither of them. So I don't know. Maybe we would be slightly better off and maybe slightly worse off. But yeah, man, I don't know. There's nothing I've seen from Nico that makes me believe that like he's the antidote to whatever people thought legitimately and truly understood to be the issue with Josh.
Okay, so let's go back to some of my reasons to be hopeful. So you mentioned schedule should be easier. So you talked about the top 3. If you go to the top 5 in the West, we just have one game against the top 5, and that's against Seattle. And that's assuming they don't progress in the Club World Cup. It's going to be just after that, if that game happens. We also have 2 games that Andrew Wiebe would probably call bonus games against DC and Montreal, 2 of the bottom feeders of the Eastern Conference at the moment. But those are both on the road, so factor that in. Another reason is that this team is still underperforming our XG by over 10 goals. That is the worst delta in MLS. I think the next team is at like 8 point something. And Austin is, depending on which source you look at, like 10.2 to 10.5 goals under their XG. And so it's not good. Like, it's not a good thing that that's happening, but it gives you a statistical reason to believe that it could or should get better. And it, like, think about what 10 goals would do to this team. Like, Austin is still like upper third as far as goals allowed in the league. And so 10 goals goes a long way. And so if we can just get a little bit of that luck back, like, it should help. And then one of my biggest things, and will come to nobody's surprise, is that Mikkel Dessler is back. There's a healthy team all around. So I'm excited about Robert Taylor and him being available to either start or come in off the bench. But Mikkel Dessler is going to change this team a lot. If you watch what happens when a player like Biru or Dessler receives the ball wide versus what happens when John Gallagher receives the ball wide, Gallagher does a decent to good job in many areas of the field, but possession, like in possession phases of play, he's a dead end. Like, he receives, he looks up his sideline. If nothing's there, he turns and he plays it backwards. When Biru receives the ball, he faces up a defender. He'll take a touch around. He creates options for himself that Gallagher does not, and Dessler can do that as well. And so I'm excited to see, just like as we're trying to possess the ball, what Dessler can add to that. And then I think he's also a better defender, a better progressor of the ball. He lacks some of the things that Gallagher has pushing forward, especially in transition moments, but I'll take that trade every day of the week.
Yeah, and to what we just talked about with the wingers, I mean, John Gallagher running forward at people in any position is a net positive. And when he's forced to do other things, like, it's not great. And having Dessler back, like, allows him to do the things that he can do that help the team the most. So I can agree with that. I guess if we didn't have the experience of being Austin FC fans for 3 of the 4 years of this club, in 2025 we're in the same spot, we would be like, oh, the Western Conference, like, it's the table's thick, and Austin's like on the edge or near the edge of the playoff line, and there's all these other things. But it's just, at some point, past history is indicative of future performance, and that's where it's like it's really, really hard to take all these things and be positive based upon we've done this show for years now, and I feel like we've had this conversation many times, and only once in the history of this club have the things that we've talked about like come to pass in a positive way. And that's where it's hard to sort of separate this current situation from the situations we've seen before.
Yeah, and if we're going to take a turn to the negative again, we still a creative playmaker has not magically emerged in this team, and at this point I don't have a lot of faith that it's going to. I think Taylor can help in that regard a little bit, but he's not the magic, like the silver bullet that's going to cure this. So we're going to talk about a player rumor here in a little bit. That's not going to happen until very late in the season. And we'll talk about whether this guy, if it actually happens, is even the answer to this problem anyway. So yeah, I'm not going to lie and say there's a lot of reason to be hopeful, There's a few reasons, but not any really great ones, I don't think.
Yeah, but if you put them all together and then you look at the context of everybody in the bottom half of this table is dealing with the same issues, and if Austin stays healthy and things break right and people come back and perform to their ability and Nico settles on a slide, I mean, there's definitely a path forward. And I think probably every other podcast from every team that's sitting between 6 and 11 are having these same kinds of discussions about how the things that need to happen for them to make the playoffs. So yeah, I don't want to like leave on despair. Like there's definitely the opportunity there and reasons to believe it can happen. And it's just a little bit of being jaded by the fact that we haven't in past years like managed to pull these things off. But this year's like hope springs eternal. So maybe this year is a different outcome. So like, yeah, let's go on to the Austin FC news of the week. I think at this point, talk about player rumor and some other things that are going on.
Yeah, so we got another player rumor, this one coming out of Brazil, that Austin FC has expressed interest in a 20-year-old Venezuelan attacking midfielder currently playing at Fortaleza in Brazil, and his name is Kervin Andrade. This source is I think it's an Instagram account called Fuchi na Sua Tela. I probably said that very wrong, but I don't know how reliable this source is, but it doesn't seem like it's nothing. Yeah, talking a little bit about where this guy comes from. So as I said, he's Venezuelan playing in Brazil. He became a rotational starter with Deportivo La Guaira in the Venezuelan First Division, the seasons that he was 16 and 17 years old, so quite young. Got transferred to Fortaleza in Brazil, started getting first team minutes in 2024 when he was 19. Hasn't been getting as many minutes in 2025 now that he's 20, but he has already made 4 appearances with the Venezuelan senior national team, including a Copa America match at Q2 Stadium where he got an assist. So if you go to his Instagram page, the first photo that you see is him sitting in the Q2 Stadium locker room celebrating his first senior national team assist.
And the teammate of Austin FC legend, right then?
That's right, playing with Tomas Pochettino at Fortaleza.
Also one of my very favorite tequilas, but also named from strength and not because they're from the same place.
So I did see that there's some other reports out of Brazil today saying that Orlando City is also interested, and there's also multiple clubs in Brazil interested. So this reads to me that I mentioned that he's not getting as many minutes this season, that his agent is potentially stirring up some stuff. So we'll see how legit any of this ends up being, if he's trying to get more playing time or get a move in Brazil and using MLS as a bargaining chip there. But yeah, we'll find out.
Let's talk about him as a player. So you said you watched some clips today. Like, what do you see from him that maybe excites you, or like, I don't know, maybe also makes you nervous about where he might slot in? And maybe before we do that, let's talk about roster designation, because I think in the context of like what he might mean, you know, if Austin would have to pay him as a DP, that's one thing. If Austin can sign him in a way that he's just on a regular contract, that's another thing. So like, where do you see him slotting in as far as what we know about how much he makes and how much it might take to bring him over?
Yeah, as far as his salary goes, I have no clue. I would imagine it's not super high, but he's under contract through 2028 with Fortaleza. And so the reports are that it would take multiple $1 million to get them to let him leave. And so because of that reason, he would either need to be a designated player, or because he's so young, he could be a U22. So I think this is like pretty straightforward U22 player, and we have the spots for that, right? So I think that would make a lot of sense.
And that wouldn't be that far off from the rumored. It would be more, but not so much more than the rumored amount that we paid for Dubrowski, right? Like they paid pretty significant transfer fee in, but because of the U22 designation, they were able to make that move. So now, like,
Right,
what do you like from him as a player?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of MLS players that he's similar to, and we just saw Diego Luna. He's not so dissimilar from that type of player. So is a small guy, but uses that low center of gravity to his benefit when he's shifting around and keeping that ball close to him. So really clever and skillful player. Whenever he receives the ball, he's always looking forward, looking to progress the ball and create chances. Um, Plays really nice passes, can get in the box and get a shot off. So really dangerous attacking player. If we're, which is like we've said, that's the kind of guy we need, right? My concern here and why I would think like he's not the instant solution to all of our problems is just because he's so young. He's turned 20 in April. And so if we're asking that guy to move to a new country and to instantly be one of the most important players on our team, I think that's a little bit foolish. So I think he has the profile, the poise, playing at such a high level at such a young age, that I think he's very clearly going to be a high level player, but it still might be more of a move for like next year, which I know Austin fans are tired of hearing, but I think that's kind of what this one would be.
Yeah, and so you would put him ahead of another very talented 20-year-old player who spent his whole life playing in this country for this moment in this season, I guess.
Are you saying Owen?
Yeah. Do you think he would like provide more than Owen right now?
He's a more creative player than Owen. He is not
Okay.
I would not say he's a better player than Owen right now. He is a more creative player. He would walk into this team and be the most creative player on this team instantly. Like that's without a doubt in my mind, just because there's no competition for that. But I don't think he's going to come in and start stealing Owen's minutes necessarily. I think he might steal somebody else's minutes or taking bench minutes away from people. But I think you would, if he comes in and is the real deal, you find a way to get both of those guys on the field. You don't sit Owen at this point.
Okay, I like that. That's to your point. It's like it's a net positive. It's not the ultimate answer. Everything that's wrong with the club, but it's one thing that makes Austin better tomorrow than it was today on the day he comes in.
All right, let's move on to a few other pieces of news. We have Open Cup details. Finally, we weren't 100% sure when or what time the game is going to be, but we know now, right?
Yeah, we missed that by a day. This comes out on Tuesday afternoon, so like 12 hours after this show publishes. And that is that officially the match will be at 9:30 Central, 7:30 Pacific on Tuesday, July 8th in San Jose. So that was sort of the big thing is the announcement of the official date and time of that match.
And then we've got some Gold Cup games coming up here at Q2.
Which, yeah, these we knew, but people keep asking me, like, what's this Gold Cup thing? And are you going? And what does it mean? And so this is I guess the Gold Cup is the tournament for CONCACAF. So the 3 matches in Austin are Thursday, June 19th, Saudi Arabia versus USA. Friday, June 20th, Guatemala versus Panama. And then Tuesday, June 24th, Panama versus Jamaica. You want to go and you're a season ticket member, you can get it. Man, I find trouble being excited about this tournament, and maybe it's particularly at the USA matches against Saudi Arabia, which the country annoys me in geopolitical reasons, but also I don't understand when they're at CONCACAF. So I don't. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, my ticket rep called me today and was just the check-in calls that they do occasionally, and he was asking if I was going to go to these, and I was like, listen, man, it's hard to get excited to go back to that stadium when I've been there so much lately. And so I was like, we'll see how I feel that week. Maybe I get excited about soccer and want to go, but I'm not committing myself to that at this point, especially for, like you said, games that it's soccer. So I would have a good time if I went, but it's the drive and paying that much and then driving back late at night. And like, it's all of that I'm like, is it worth it right now? In context, maybe not.
Yeah. The other thing we got is the fan voting is now open for the All-Star game. So you can vote on MLSsoccer.com/vote. Just as a reminder that it's 12 players that would be determined by a vote of fans, players, and media. So you get 1/3 of the selection process for 12. 12 be selected by Nico Estevez and Austin FC, and then 2 players will be selected by Don Garber. I assume Don Garber gets the last pick after the other 24 selected that he gets to get the guys.
I
that
would
he wants
imagine
after
so.
that. Yeah, I would have to imagine that.
I know
So,
we talked about how many Austin FC players Nico Estevez could get away with sneaking into this team. I think it's a harder proposition than what we pitched a few months ago when we were talking about this. I think you can still give Brad Stuver his lifetime achievement award and put him in there.
totally.
Who else? Like, could he sneak Owen Wolff in there?
Yeah, I think Owen Wolff and Brendan Heinzike are the only two reasonable other choices. Because Phil West posted this article, and like Brendan Vasquez is not having a terrible year, but there's a whole bunch of people who scored a whole lot more goals, so that one's hard. I think honestly Heinzike is the easiest one, just because it seems like defender choices are squishy and there's not like great metrics for them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so you're like, this guy's just as good as the other guys, because like central defenders metrics are like hard to calculate. So like it feels like he's the most likely second option for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, should we move on to our Rapids preview real quick?
Yeah, let's do it. Real quick. We don't have a lot of time. There's not a lot to talk about on that too. I am 40 minutes from Denver right now at a conference, and I believe I'm only like 7 minutes from the stadium where Colorado will be playing against Austin on Saturday nights. This one's at 8:30 on Saturday. Colorado's 8th in the table on 22 points in 16 matches, just ahead of Austin, which says 20 from 17. Just notable players. Cole Bassett's going to be out, has been out. Zach Steffen's going to be out and has been out for a few weeks, although somehow Zach Steffen still got called up for the national team Gold Cup roster, even though it doesn't seem like he's healthy enough to play. Good for him to like make that one deal to go to Manchester City, which apparently he can live off of the rest of his life in America. Already played once.
I know Rafa Navajo had been out for a couple of games with injury. I think he was back on the bench. I'm not sure if he actually came in as a sub, but it seems like he's maybe on the edge of should be available, but we're not sure if he'll actually start in this game or not.
How much we're going to see from him. So Colorado won on March 8th, 1-0. This is like that run of games for Austin. Had a bunch of 1-0 matches. Jordy Mihalovic, probably not surprisingly, clearly the best player, 7 goals, 2 assists, leading the team both in goals and assists this year. So, I mean, what do we think we see from Austin in this one?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about if you could justify starting Uzuni. He is away with Albania for this game. So maybe this is a blessing in disguise. And the story is not, you're benching your DP to start someone else. The story is, your DP's gone, so you have to put someone else in.
He's away.
And, maybe they did a good job and you keep playing the hot hand. That would be an easier story for Estevez to spin. Either way, I'm interested to see, especially if Robert Taylor is healthy enough to start. I know they've been limiting his minutes and maybe they're not ready for him to be a starter right now. But if he is, I would be very curious to see him slot in at that left wing spot, play the 4-3-3, some version of that 4-3-3, and just let dudes be good at what they're good at. And then hopefully Brendan Heinzike is back. I'm sure we'll find out later this week what his situation is. Hopefully it's not an injury or something that's going to keep him out, because if it is, that means Biru's maybe playing center back, or we're bringing up a second team guy to start at center back.
Yeah, neither one of those are great. We remember the Alexander Ring center back days. And while he was awful, that was a tough time. So yeah, that's one where the window can't come enough for Austin to hopefully be able to plug that depth. No, I think this is just one where this is kind of like what we were looking for in San Diego. It's kind of hope to win a close, tight, possibly cynical game away, right? And come out with a victory and put yourself in a slightly better position in the table to continue through the summer. But I mean, there's like not a lot of excitement out of either of these clubs, so maybe that's the way it works out.
Yeah, talking about like the playing stuff, Colorado does not keep the ball very much. And so you could say that maybe it's going to be a super ugly game where Austin doesn't try to keep the ball either. I don't think they're good enough to like demand that much respect. So I kind of want to, I don't know. I want this to be a new start. And maybe that's foolish of me, but I'm hoping that we can put May behind us, try something a little bit different with guys in positions that make sense for them on the field, and go out and get a win in Colorado. Is that too much to ask, Jeremiah?
No, let's go for that, man. I hope that we leave next week's show off with everything went right, because I feel like we've had enough of writing what's wrong with the offense. When are things going to change? Let's look for a silver lining. So yeah, man, let's just go for it. We got Austin's, other than the center back position, Austin's generally healthy. They've got a week off. Like this is our chance to optimize whatever this club can be and can do. You can hope that like we're halfway through the season and we're done sort of experimenting and we're going to lock in. So let's go for that. Let's choose joy.
All right. Before we finish, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We're going to be sending out Patreon stuff in the near future. So if go and update your address, do it now while you're thinking about it. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back in next week to review the Colorado match and then preview the match at home versus the New York Red Bulls, and then cover some other Austin FC news. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente.
Oh my God.
Because they love cheap boom boom sauce.
Yeah.